Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, NetSecOps, Everything Network Managers Must Know About Collaborating with Security. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speakers are Shamus McGillicuddy, Research Director at Enterprise Management Associates, and Jon Kies, Manager of Network Management Product Marketing at Micro Focus. Shamus has more than 12 years of experience in the IT industry, primarily as a journalist covering the network infrastructure market. At EMA, he is the Senior Analyst for the Network Management Practice. Jon has more than 20 years of product management and marketing experience with hardware and software products. Prior to Micro Focus, he started in application performance management with Optimal Networks and launched their first synthetic monitoring solution. And before I hand things over to today's featured speakers, I wanted the audience to know that Shamus and Jon will be ending the presentation by taking your questions. Do feel free to log them anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA that will include both the on-demand webinar as well as a PDF of the speaker slides and some additional resources from Micro Focus. So I hope you will check that out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Shamus McGillicuddy. Shamus?
Thank you, Raleigh, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to start off with a presentation about EMA's perspective on the concept of NetSecOps, which is a term I've coined just for the specific to some research I conducted recently. I'm not asking you to go out in the world and use this term. I know everyone's probably saturated with DevOps and DevSecOps and all kinds of other ops. I'm not trying to promulgate or proselytize the concept of NetSecOps, but it was used in the context of some research I published recently where we surveyed 250 North American and European network managers on a variety of topics having to do with their jobs. It was published under the title of Network Management Megatrends 2018, and a lot of the data covered in this presentation will be taken directly from that research. So the agenda for my portion of the presentation, it starts with just talking about how networking professionals are already security veterans. Security is a part of the job of a network manager, obviously. It's just that the concept of security responsibilities for the networking team seems to be evolving a bit as infrastructure and technology evolves and enterprises digitize themselves. Then we're going to talk about, I'll talk about how network operations and security operations collaboration is becoming a strategic priority for a lot of enterprises. Then we'll examine how that convergence of those two groups or collaboration takes shape, and finally talk about some technology strategies for that collaboration. So first off, security has been top of mind for years for the networking guys. Every 2 years as part of our ongoing research, we ask network managers to tell us what IT initiatives, broad IT initiatives are driving their decision making, and also what network technology initiatives are driving their decision making. The top network technology initiative that drives their network management decision making has been the same for 4 straight years, 2012, 2014, 2016, 2018. It was network security. It's top of mind for them, regardless of whatever else is going on. For the last few years, they've been focused on WAN optimization and things like that. And most recently, they've been focused more on software-defined networking and hybrid cloud networking and software-defined WAN. But still, network security is more important than all those things, and it can remain so. But they focus on infrastructure, not necessarily cybersecurity. So they think about, okay, I got to maintain the software on my switches and routers, maybe the firewalls. I need to manage those firewalls and intrusion prevention systems. All those security guys may have some co-administrative responsibilities with me on that. I'm responsible probably for establishing and managing VPNs and secure remote connectivity, access control and guest management through my Wi-Fi network is really important. And I'm also, when I'm designing a network, I'm segmenting it in a way that makes sense. Security guys probably want to make sure, maybe audit that in some way, but it's my responsibility to set up VLANs and stuff like that. They tend to have a hands-off attitude towards things like behavioral analysis or security analytics in most cases. They're not monitoring threats. They're not necessarily focused on malware protection or security incident management. But network data, the data that the network team may have ownership of or best access to, can support a lot of those tasks. So we're seeing the collaboration between network operations and security operations is becoming a more of a strategic priority for enterprises. And that's driven largely by the technology initiatives that are top of mind these days. As I mentioned earlier, we always ask them about what broad IT initiatives are impacting network managers, as well as what network technology initiatives are impacting them. In terms of broad IT initiatives, you see at the top of the list here, software-defined data centers, server virtualization, infrastructure as a service, private cloud, all these things. We also see a lot of IoT activity as well, and also software as a service, but these are the top four. These are the things that are really pushing change with networking, but IoT and SaaS are also up there. So what happens? The perimeter disappears. You got infrastructure, you got services that span multiple clouds. You got the rate of change is accelerating because all these technologies really drive a dynamic and elastic infrastructure, which means as the security team, the network team are probably struggling to keep up. Endpoint diversity expands, especially things like IoT. Really, you start having a hard time controlling device access. And then critical services are becoming vulnerable to disruption, not just penetration. Someone might hit your private cloud with a DDoS attack or something, and or AWS gets hit with a DDoS attack, and suddenly like a service that you rely on AWS delivering is gone. And network service assurance and security are getting more linked together. Root causes of complex IT service issues and outages are very security focused. We ask network managers to think about the three most recent complex IT service issues that required collaboration across multiple groups within the IT organization, and then ask them to identify the most common root causes of those complex issues. Network infrastructure was at the top of the list, but was by no means the main issue that it often gets accused of being. Right behind it was security-related issues. That's something like an infected host, or a DDoS attack, or some other security incident. And then you see end client system or user error, number 3, and then number 4, security systems. So that's something perhaps the security team has under-provisioned a firewall that's in line with critical traffic, or they've injected a security rule that's impacting applications, blocking or throttling traffic. These are the issues that the network team might be triaging, and then they find it's a security incident, and they need to bring the security group in. We also ask network managers every couple of years to tell us what concepts are becoming more important to them as they try to measure their own success, or how they're perceived, how the CIOs evaluate the effectiveness of network operations, for instance. And at the top of the list there you see security risk reduction is a huge priority. I mean, at the bottom of the list is internal SLAs, but security reduction more important to them than, or becoming more important to them than at a higher velocity than service quality and improved network visibility and end user experience. They're being asked to be contributing to the management of risk. And we also see it in a variety of other nuanced ways. We ask, with whom are you collaborating more with than you have in the past? Number one response from the network managers was IT security, cybersecurity. Which systems do you require your network management tools to integrate with? Number 2, security monitoring systems. Who uses custom or role-based views into your network management products? So, like a network performance management system or a network change and configuration management system. Number 2 response, IT security. Which network management product features add the most value? This is like broadly speaking across all the management products you might use. Number one response, integrated security-related incidents. That all points in one direction, and that's convergence or collaboration with SecOps. So we asked network managers this year to describe the nature of collaboration between them and the SecOps group. And 91% indicated some form of formal collaboration with that group. The most common response was fully converged groups with shared tools and processes. That was a bigger, more common issue or more common state of play in the mid-market and the smaller companies where there may not necessarily have been silos to begin with, but still like more it's like a quarter or almost 30% I think of larger enterprises also indicated some level of convergence between those two groups. The second most common state of affairs is separate teams, but they've integrated their tools in some way to facilitate collaboration or unified workflows. And then a smaller group of 16% said that the separate teams had implemented shared tools to facilitate that collaboration. So most enterprises are reporting that they're collaborating, but it's not easy. IT leadership is going to have to step up here. A lot of times the CIO or the VP of infrastructure will say, you know what, you need to work more closely with the security group, but then they don't give them the time or the space to actually get it done. They don't give them the budget. They're going to need new tools or new integrations. There's not a mature market of vendors out there that say we have a tool that's used by both the network group and the security group. I mean, there's a lot. We've seen a lot of vendors that have introduced products that cross that border, saying we've been a network management vendor for so long, we're taking our core platform and creating a security version of it for security users. But even when I talk to those guys, they say, well, we sell to one group or the other. We're not selling a product that's meant to serve both constituencies. And then, there's no established set of best practices or processes for a lot of these groups that are trying to converge or collaborate. What's bringing them together? We've kind of covered this already, but these are the benefits that enterprises told us, or network managers told us, or were experienced as a result of collaboration. You see OpEx reduction and risk reduction are at the top of the list, and we've already revealed that there's some interest in reducing risk. But you also have streamlined workflows as a result. People are being more efficient. And then also highlighted in green here, responsiveness to change in business. You're able to respond to requests for new applications, new initiatives, support of new initiatives more quickly when the security group and the network group can move as one. Then you have CapEx efficiencies. Maybe you're better able to right-size your infrastructure, your firewalls, for instance. If the two teams are moving together, you're not going to end up oversubscribing a firewall if you can plan things properly. Critical points of collaboration with security. This was interesting. The number one response was infrastructure design and deployment. So it's not necessarily all about responding to incidents and detecting incidents. These two groups are working together at the beginning of the infrastructure lifecycle, saying, let's design this network and build it out in such a way that the security group is going to be satisfied with the foundation that we put in place for the overall perimeter of security, but also protecting data in motion and things like that. But yeah, event and incident monitoring, obviously number 2. Incident response is up there, and then change management, patch management, very important, and then policy verification, validation. So those are the top 5 areas that they're looking at. But as I said, there's some challenges here, and we group them roughly into 3 areas: leadership, culture, and technology. So under leadership, there's no best practices or processes. That's the number 1 response that people give when they're struggling here. Also, IT leadership isn't offering sufficient support. I already mentioned that CIOs don't necessarily give you the room to get this done. And teams are arguing over who's in charge. Security team and the network team haven't historically gotten along, and now you're asking them to work together. They're going to say, well, I know how to do this right. I'm not going to trust you guys to lead the way. On the other hand, with culture, you got the network and security teams. They have different goals. The network team, they want to lock things. They want to open things up, get people access to services and applications. The security team, they just want to lock everything down. Those are pulling in different directions, obviously. Security team is resistant to change. Also, conflicts over who owns the data and who should be sharing data. We see that as a problem a lot of the time. And then on the technology side, number 3 response to overall challenges, no shared data set that's relevant, consistent, and timely. They need access to some sort of pool of data that both groups can share. But of course, as we mentioned, there's conflicts over who owns and shares that data in a lot of cases. Architecture prevents silo breakdown. And then finally, network team skills gap. So that rounds out the challenges. It's a lot of things to think about. So one thing to do is to put together a technology strategy to facilitate that collaboration. And we identified critical tools in each silo from the perspective of the network manager. So security guys might have a different take on this, but the network manager said that the tools that they have in their tool set that are most valuable for collaboration with security are network performance monitoring. You think along the lines of like flow monitoring can see a lot of behavioral changes, for instance, flow-based performance monitoring. And then advanced network analytics and NCCM tools, network change and configuration management. That's going to support security audits and reduce errors that lead to security incidents. And then on the security management side of things, the network managers think that security analytics tools and security incident event management or security incident event monitoring solutions are valuable. Threat intelligence feeds, DDoS detection, and prevention obviously is a huge opportunity for protecting performance. And then next generation firewalls and unified threat management systems round out the top 5, although in a lot of cases the network team might already have ownership or partial ownership of those devices. And then what are the options for bringing tools together? Well, we already saw that there's some differing approaches to this, but there's the shared tools approach where you can have integrated workflows. You can have when you're looking at this, when you're using the same tools, naturally there's going to be some opportunities for collaboration in there, and you're going to have that single data set, obviously. If you're both working in workflows on a platform, pulling from one data set. Integrated tools, you're going to have separate workflows with some opportunities for collaboration and data shared across those tools. Not perfect, not as effective perhaps as shared tools, but it might get the job done. And then also there's the opportunity to have a shared data set. One data lake feeding separate tools. You're not going to necessarily have workflow integration or collaboration facilitated within your tools, but at least you have one data set. Some enterprises might take multiples of these. Have 1 or 2 or all 3 of these approaches, depending on which aspects of their management toolkit. For instance, you might have a shared data set in the form of a packet recorder that's collecting data on. And then accessible by security tools and network monitoring tools, but you also might have some sort of event management system that's shared by both security and networking, and that might be the central area of collaboration. But then you have that data set from the packet recorder, for instance. So one critical area that we think will be important for security and network collaboration will be automation, network automation. And this is a huge focus for network managers right now. We see that 92% of network managers told us that they are looking for opportunities to expand their use of network automation in general. And 70% of them said that that was a high priority. Now the top 4 benefits of network automation from the perspective of these people number one was security risk reduction. We've already seen a huge focus on that. And then improved collaboration across IT also. Automation facilitates collaboration, not just between the network and security group, but amongst everybody, with the right strategy in place. And then rapid response to service problems and increased network agility. But the first two on that list are obviously relevant to the context of this conversation. We asked them what technologies are they using as they pursue network automation. SDN, NCCM, SD-WAN. SDN and SD-WAN, those have been hyped up for a while. We're starting to see over the last couple of years some mainstream adoption. That's very specific automation, more of like an orchestration of services or connectivity. Network change and configuration management, very mature market, obviously still very relevant in this context and already identified as an important tool for supporting collaboration between network and security. And here we see it as a major automation option as well. And then what kind of tasks do they primarily target with network automation? Optimization at the top of the list, but not far behind, is security incident response. Nearly half of enterprises say network automation supports security incident response. So obviously that's a major opportunity for facilitating collaboration between the networking group and the security group. So finally, I've reached the end. I'm trying to leave time for Jon to talk too. So I'm just going to quickly go through this roadmap for so-called NetSecOps success. First off, recognize that the network team does have a security mandate because security affects network performance, network availability. Without a doubt, security incidents are a major factor in a lot of complex service issues. And risk reduction is an organizational priority for the NetOps team. And SecOps and information security can be partners. They may not like you, but they might be valuable partners in the future. So identify how you can break those silos down, make friends with the security group. I'd look for ways to share or integrate your tools or acquire a tool that can be shared across both groups. Look for ways to assemble a shared data set, build trust with that data. The security group might resist, but you need to find ways to build trust with them. And then partner on infrastructure design and operational monitoring and incident response. Talk to the security group and say, you know what, we're about to install this new data center network. We really want you to partner with us on this. We think that with your partnership, we can really deliver a higher quality network that's more secure and serves the needs of the business more sufficiently. And then keep in mind that network automation is going to be essential to this if you haven't already figured that out. It's already a priority for most network managers, and it can streamline security response as well as infrastructure optimization and capacity planning. But security response is a big target there. A lot of you probably are already familiar with network change and configuration management. It's a proven technology for SecOps collaboration and network automation from what we've seen in the research. Lots of other technologies out there as well, like SDN, SD-WAN, and SD-WAN is booming right now. But NCCM tools are a mature market and obviously is an area of opportunity for this partnership. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jon. I'll be back afterwards to answer some questions. But thanks for your time. And Jon, take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Shamus. And, let me just say that I think NetSecOps really well describes what we're trying to get done here between the security team and the operations team. If you talk about DevSecOps, right, you're talking about a real shift left of trying to make sure that security is built into the applications that they're developing early in the process. But when we're talking about an ongoing operations for infrastructure that you may have had up for months or years, NetSecOps is a great description. So, Shamus, if you don't mind, I'm going to keep using it. So when we look at the security lifecycle or compliance lifecycle, it's very, very typical. You guys have all seen these lifecycle charts. We completely understand what we're trying to do here. Discover, determine current state, compare with desired, remediate, and update and report. But the question becomes, who owns the tools? Does the security team, the operations team? There are some overlaps and gaps that we need to address. And if we look at it on the left side, we have IT security, and on the right side, IT operations. So IT security typically can't automate remediation. They don't have the tool set. IT operations, on the other hand, does have that tool set. IT security, they maintain a security configuration database. And IT operations, an asset configuration database. These are the same things. They're just looking at it from a different point of view, and they may have been siloed and they purchased the tools separate without considering, hey, maybe we should be working together here. And then for IT security, we monitor the environment, find issues, but can't fix them. Now, they can fix them, but mostly network managers aren't real happy giving a bunch of access to the security team who they feel like maybe doesn't have the full vision that the operations team does. And of course, the IT operations monitors the environments, finds issues, and can fix them, whether they're related to performance or to security issues. So what we really need to do is identify how we can bring IT security and IT operations together. And I wanted to point out that when we're talking about security issues, we're not talking about zero-day exploits, right? We're not talking about the things that researchers haven't already discovered. We're talking about known vulnerabilities that are out there in the wild, have been identified and reported. And in fact, this Verizon report says 85% of the successful exploits are from known exploits. So known vulnerabilities are creating this. And that's really an issue. Now, of course, we just say to ourselves, well, let's just, fix all of these. Well, we can't really do that just because of the overwhelming quantity of these exploits. And when we look at that, even at this data point of April 16, 2018, from the beginning of the year, Cisco alone has identified 1,200 common vulnerabilities and exposures. So if you have a Cisco house, or even if you have, especially if you have a multi-vendor network infrastructure, this is overwhelming your team. And you have to identify those which are most critical and the ones that you're going to have to fix right away. But the question is, how do you get those done quickly? What can you do to enable that as part of your ongoing network management solution? So when we look at network operations management, for a long time, originally HP and then HPE and now Micro Focus, we had two core products, Network Node Manager and Network Automation. And those were really strong standalone solutions with some strong integrations between them. But about a year ago, we took a look, and we knew that we wanted to go this direction for some time, but we really put the resources into delivering what we call now network operations management. And this is the ability to manage your end-to-end network processes from every level, whether it's just looking at the health of your network or automating network management activities. So this is really important in terms of how do we answer this next level of sharing between teams. How do we enable both the operations and the security team to effectively automate their changes to the network? How do we drive compliance on our network devices? And with network operations management, we're able to bring this together. In fact, EMA and Shamus have been talking about tool consolidation for years, but recently Gartner also came out and talked about something called NetOps 2.0, which was exactly this. This is bringing together the management and automation of your network together along with analytics. And that's what we're delivering with network operations management to give you complete configuration and performance management. And of course, it's still built on the enterprise scalability and device support that you expect from Network Node Manager and network automation. Really, some amazing stats here. We support networks of almost 400,000 nodes under management. We have 1.4 million interfaces under management at a separate one, 185 patents, 250,000 downloads, and $4 billion in cumulative revenue from these products. So really an amazing solution now up-leveled to what we call network operations management. And the first thing that I really want to talk about here is how do we use policy-based audit and remediation to drive that security compliance. And when we look at this, we have built-in tools that allow us to decrease the risk and improve operations via automation. So here's kind of looking at the core automation capabilities. We have groupings, we have quick views, we have policy that you're able to build or bring in from the vendors. And this enables you to really get control over your network devices. And when we look at network devices, we look at it as what we call a 3D compliance model. So not just looking at configuration and the level of OS on the device, but also the running state. And recognizing that for a different OS and a different configuration, there can be different levels of compliance. And building that into our tools so that you can develop policy that is effective for your environment. And, some people say, well, if my configuration is one way, right, and we have that set, how is that going to be different than running state? Well, in every case, you have engineers that may get on devices, bring in tools to help, like install new applications or new updates. And, in fact, this is something that Cisco had a problem with. They had their tool that was being left on the device, and that had vulnerabilities in it. So it wasn't in the configuration, but it was still running on the device, and it was creating vulnerabilities. And only by checking all three of these vectors, configuration, software, and running state, can you determine whether or not your device is truly in compliance. And then when you want to maintain your compliance, right, we have a key capability called change plans that identifies the conditions, validates those, and allows you to change or roll back. And this really speaks to how are you going to work with your security team to update your network. Right now we know that network operators and engineers are already overwhelmed with the number of security tasks, even though that might not be in their primary job description. But if we can build these change plans, these automation workflows that allow compliance to be completed in a safe and secure way, then we can open this up and allow the security engineers to make the changes that are going to work well with the operations team. So it's this joint capability to share the change plans and to allow the individual groups to execute them, knowing that they're going to have good results. And I will say the most interesting thing about automation is that a lot of teams are really nervous about using it because they feel like maybe they'll bring down a device or it won't do it correctly. But with the conditions validation and then the ability to change or roll back based on that query, we provide that confidence in making the changes to the network devices. And then one of the really key capabilities of bringing network automation and network performance into the same view is what we call change correlated performance views. So that blue vertical line there is a configuration change indicator. What we're doing is bringing in the data from the NCCM system, network automation, and overlaying that on a performance view. And so you can see immediately what the changes or when there were recent changes to the configuration or any of the other device, OS or running state. Whenever a change was made, we can identify it, and the operator can understand what the impact is to performance. So really an amazing capability for the network operators to really be able to view, hey, what's going on in my network, and identifying what the impact of a change is on any network device. And then finally, we also have our executive dashboards, which allows this data to be distributed across teams, both to security executives or IT executives, and give them the visibility they need to understand what their level of risk is. What percentage of their devices are compliant? What are the root causes? What are the opportunities for improvement? All in these customizable executive dashboards that we provide with Network Operations Management. So that's a quick look at Network Operations Management. Like Raleigh said, we'll have the recording, we'll have the slides here. If you're interested, please be sure to visit our website, microfocus.com/nom for Network Operations Management. From there, you can access all the great things we do, blogs. We have a LinkedIn group that talks about technology management for networks. And really an opportunity for you to consider when you're moving to your next network solution, what are you going to do in terms of bringing your security and operations teams together. So that's it for me. Kick it open for questions. Raleigh?
Great. Thank you, Jon. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions. Starting with you, Jon, how does network operations management compare to network node manager?
Okay. So you guys probably are really familiar with Network Node Manager. It's pretty much the first product available in the network management arena. Initially, fault and performance, but that is only a single component of network operations management, and it's this integration of our change management and the performance and health capabilities of Network Node Manager that delivers the full capabilities of network operations management. So you'll still see some screens in there. Network Node Manager, it's one of the core pieces of technology, but it's up-leveled to network operations management.
Great. Thank you for that insight. Shamus, jumping over to you. Our security group hates my NetOps team. Any suggestions on how to fix that?
Well, you can't. You can't. There's no silver bullet. I guess there's a few angles of attack there. First off is get the people above both your pay grades on board and say, you guys need set a strategic direction that forces the security group to put their feelings or distrust aside in some way, and make sure that people above your pay grade are champions of that effort. If they've and that might mean maybe they're like maybe this is, if it's a top-down issue, they've probably already identified the value of that integration and that collaboration. But if it's a bottom-up approach and you're the one that's trying to drive this, you need to sort of point them to the fact that you can really deliver a more reliable and high-performing network if it's also more secure and more impervious to various malicious attacks. And once you have that sponsor, they can, feelings don't necessarily matter as long as that sponsorship is strong and the leadership is strong. On the other side, talking to those people and, offering an olive branch, saying, here's some reports from my operations tools that can show you what we're seeing in terms of suspicious activity. I thought this could help you. Maybe offering them access to a set of data that you think might be valuable to them. Just extend the olive branch, I guess. I don't know if any of that will be effective. But I think top-down leadership is probably the best way to overcome that.
And I'll just mention that that recognizing that they have shared goals, right? And and getting that understanding will help them move to that next level where they're operating as a team instead of rivals.
Yeah, I agree.
Staying in the vein of conflict, we have another question, Shamus, about the biggest conflict between our NetOps and SecOps is contention over spans and taps. Did you look at that in your research?
Not this research. I'm publishing some research in a couple weeks on that topic, actually, or at least touches on that topic a little bit. I'm looking at the network visibility fabric world, and one key area for that is probably like a network packet broker or network visibility controller or something like that, where you have a device that aggregates traffic from multiple points, multiple segments, multiple taps and span ports, and then can distribute those flows to multiple tools. And we find that that research is going to show that the most common approach to instrumentation is to establish some best practices and processes around connecting tools to those fabrics of visibility fabrics, especially if you're doing like inline security tools that are connecting to. So yeah, that'll be coming in a couple weeks.
Okay, good to know. Received another question about the conflict between NetOps and SecOps. I'll throw this out to both of you, and if I mispronounce any of the acronyms, please excuse me, but how do you respond to NetOps when they avoid sending syslogs to SecOps SIM, stating that their products provide much better ways to display and correlate that data in their network SOC versus security SOC?
And I'll respond that that's just the core conflict between NetOps and SecOps that we're trying to discuss. And I think Shamus has got it right. It's got to start at the leadership level, right? And then once again, if they can recognize that they have shared goals and work together through teaming, that's going to make a better environment between the two teams. But oftentimes, you'll have someone that's responsible for security and someone that's responsible for IT infrastructure, and those at the, let's say, the VP or director level, they don't see eye to eye, and that certainly creates an issue. What I would recommend is bringing a third party in order to say, hey, how do we best solve our security issues? Because we all know that's really important, as well as maintaining performance of the network, which affects productivity. So,
I mean, my research has shown that the security group is more likely to withhold data than the network group, but that's not universal. If you got a network operations team that's refusing to let their syslogs go into a SIM. I mean, I don't know how to overcome that, but I mean, maybe it's fine if everyone's using their own tools, as long as they're finding ways to collaborate across them. Or if you're saying like, oh, the network team, I mean, my interpretation of this question is that the network team doesn't want to send syslogs to a SIM system because they think that they got a better log analytics tool, maybe, or something like that. That's fine, but still share the data. I mean, you don't have to use the SIM. If you're a networking guy, you don't want to use a security incident event management system, fine, but at least let the security guys have that data, because if you do, then you're going to at least build a bridge there and foster collaboration, because you need to share data.
Yeah. And I agree, it is a leadership issue rather than a technology issue. But the fact that there's two separate investments in sets of tools creates that divide between the two teams, because no one wants to say, oh, we're going to throw our tools away because they've already invested in them. So that's the tough piece there.
That makes sense. Thank you both. Jon, jumping over to you, I have two more questions about network operations management. The first is, can network operations management only be installed via containers?
So I did mention that network operations management is available on containers, but we do have traditional deployments as well. So any way you want to do it, we've had more and more companies really expressing some interest in the containers because of the auto scaling and ease of management there. But a lot of companies aren't ready to deploy containers in their environments yet. So.
And Jon, does network operations management have different versions?
Yes, we have Express, Premium, and Ultimate versions. You can come to our website, find out what's going on for each of those three. A lot of companies are using our Express version as a first step towards getting some configuration data within their network management.
Great, thank you. A question I'll throw out to both of you is, which of the two teams usually drives the purchase of shared technologies for NetSecOps? What are you two seeing?
My research, I didn't necessarily go into that in my research, but I can say that just anecdotally speaking, security group tends to have more budget. There's a drive across the market to address security aggressively. There's so many vendors in that market compared to the market for NetOps tools, because there's constantly a new layer of solutions that are out there to address a new threat or a new vulnerability, whatever. So, not necessarily the security group directing or driving the purchase, but recognize as the networking group that there's money available. If you can drive that collaboration, you're going to open up an opportunity. If you can find ways to build that bridge with security group, they're going to. It's very likely they're going to have money to spend. If you can say, this is a project that we should work on together. They may be a source of budget that you might not have been able to tap in the past.
I agree completely with that, and that if you're considering adding NCCN or network automation to your set of tools, the first people that you got to go talk to is the security team and tell them how you can, how this can impact them and make their network, make the shared network more secure. So.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back to some research I've done in the past. I've asked. When I was looking at, for instance, network virtualization overlays like NSX and stuff like that, and you ask enterprises who owns that, as an example. Usually it's the server group. There was a significant minority of enterprises where the security team had some ownership of NSX, and so you see this network technology that's being run by systems guys and virtualization guys, but also security guys, and in some instances networking guys. So you see this recognition that network technology can support security in some way. Just there's a random example unrelated to the rest of this conversation, but it's out there.
Great, thank you. Shamus, another question for you is, my bonus is tied to uptime, not security risk reduction. Is management going to reward this collaboration?
Maybe not directly, but if you're in a traditional network operations organization, and the shift in how you are rewarded and how you're evaluated may not come very quickly, in response to this type of trend, but just bear in mind that security affects uptime more and more. especially as as the perimeter becomes less effective, and you're vulnerable to all kinds of different attacks. The research showed, I think I highlighted it, that a security incident is the second most common root cause of a complex service degradation or service issue. And also, 40% of all service issues in general that are detected first by end users and reported to network operations through a ticket or a call. That means that those users are being impacted. There's downtime. There's a loss of productivity, and in many cases, that issue is a security incident that is possibly putting your company at enormous risk. There's a convergence there. It's impossible to ignore. Your downtime is frequently happening because there's a security incident that might be exposing critical data or perpetuating, doing some kind of fraud. It's just, when your network goes down, one of the first things you should think is, this might be a security incident.
And let me point out that if you drop a couple nines in your uptime or availability, no one's getting fired over that. Security breaches, people getting fired. So, yeah, you may not be compensated on it, but your entire group could be judged by security issues that are affecting your network. So,
or you may go out of business.
Yeah, or they just say, you know what, we're getting rid of the network operations team and outsourcing it because we don't have confidence in anyone. So, yeah.
All bad things, so hopefully none of those happen. Sage advice.
That's not, not the best way to wrap this up, is it?
Yes. Well, Jon and Shamus have provided you some insight to hopefully avoid any of those fates. So that does bring us to the conclusion of our event. I've answered all the questions that have come in. I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us, and I hope that you'll join us for a future webinar. Also, I hope you'll check out the follow-up email from EMA with additional resources from the event. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.